My name is Adam Neerman. I am the Senior Associate Director for Class and Reunion Programs with the Alumni Association. I've been with the university for 8 years, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Making the Ask panel about fundraising. I know that it may not be as popular as some of the other panels, but I think it's one of the best ones. I really enjoy fundraising. It's so powerful, and it really is all for a good cause. So thank you for coming out and learning about fundraising. I want to make this as informal a session as possible. So, whoops, let me get rid of my BlackBerry here. I want to make it an informal session as possible, so please interrupt the panel, interrupt me with questions. We want to have a good dialogue. We want you all to walk away with something. And we want all of you to be ready to start fundraising by the end of this session. So if we're ready, I'll go ahead and let the panel introduce themselves.
I am a graduate from the Division of Humanities, and I have been involved in fundraising for Chicago since about within 5 years of leaving campus. I've been involved in running phone-a-thons in Washington, D.C., where we get people out to make phone calls 2 or 3 times a year. Currently, I'm the regional chair for the Chicago Society in the Washington, D.C. area, and I've done all kinds of fundraising. It's something I adore doing as a volunteer. In my other responsibilities, I do corporate communications. I worked in telecom and am currently in the financial services industry doing corporate communications.
Hi, I'm Max Lightman. I'm a graduate of the college in '99 and a graduate of Booth from the full-time program in 2007, and I'm currently a member of the Alumni Board of Governors. I've got involved with fundraising as a member of my 5th Reunion Committee, and then was a co-chair of my college 10th Reunion Committee. I also was a co-chair of the Booth class gift when we graduated, and have stayed involved in peer-to-peer solicitations with through our class of 1999 class council.
Well, thanks, Max. Thanks, Danny. Thank you, Simon. Just to get a sense of how comfortable and what is experience of everyone here who's attending, how many people have done fundraising before? If you could raise your hand. All right, we got a few. How many people have been nervous the first time they asked for a gift? All right, that's what I thought. I'm right there with you. I remember the first time that I asked for a gift. I actually asked the donor twice. Thankfully, he said yes both times, but it takes some getting used to, and practice really makes perfect. And once you remember a few basic principles about asking for a gift and how to approach fundraising, it's not as hard as people think it is, and it's incredibly rewarding. So it feels good when you hear that person say yes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why, from a staff perspective, volunteer fundraising is necessary. I know that if you're an alum or if you're affiliated with the university, you probably receive mailings, you probably receive calls from student callers. But the reason why an ask from a volunteer is different and is necessary is because that you're asking as a peer. And that's something that a staff member, a student cannot do. And that's a really powerful ask. When you're asking as a peer, it shows that you're committed as part of your committee, as part of the fundraising campaign to the cause, and that you believe in it. And that speaks so much to the commitment and persuading and encouraging others to give and to join you in giving. And also, you may not realize this, but donors want to be asked personally. They feel special. They feel glad to know that they are important enough that you are taking the time to call them, to email them, to write them personally, and ask them for a gift. And that goes a long way. And it builds relationships. You may ask someone for a gift, but that's just the start of your relationship, especially if you're a classmate of them. You have, you're joining in this together. You're giving together, and you have an opportunity to come together and join your giving in a class gift campaign or in the fundraising campaign for the university. So today we'll talk a little bit about 3 types of giving in general giving questions. Just to go over them, I want to talk about the annual or participation gifts. These are the gifts that we encourage alumni and friends and parents to give every year. These are gifts of cash, usually made on credit card, on your checkbook, cash itself. These are gifts that we encourage people to make every year to show their participation, show their support, and to make sure that they have that annual renewal of their giving. And then we'll talk a little bit about major gifts, or we call them transformative gifts. These gifts are above and beyond an annual gift, and it's about the donor's perspective and what they're passionate about. And oftentimes these gifts take years or months of planning, and it's opportunity to make an impact, to change the way that the world works in some ways. And then talking about a little bit about planned giving or leaving a legacy, using a will or a charitable annuity to set up your legacy and to leave that to the university as a charitable gift. So we'll start off with a panel. It's a very basic question, but I think it's an incredibly important one. And if I can ask the 3 of you, why is giving important to you? Why is giving to the university important to you?
Whenever I'm talking to friends or just thinking about the reasons I give, I'm very open. I think that helps a lot as you're establishing the reasons for why you give and why that matters to you and why it matters so much to you that you're making a case for someone else to help as well. I tell my friends, I am from a small town in the middle of nowhere in Brazil. No one in my family had even learned a foreign language or left that area of the country before. They could not have afforded even the bus tickets for me to go from my small town to the capital city of my state for me to take the SAT and the TOEFL, all of that stuff, not to mention come to a great university like the University of Chicago. The only reason I came here as a student in the college is because I received financial aid from the University of Chicago. And for that reason alone, I want to give back because the university provided me so much. But here's the tricky part. If you didn't receive financial aid from the University of Chicago, that's not really going to work. And some people are really bitter about it. And it's gotten a lot better. Trust me, I work at the admissions office. We talk with families every day now, and things are getting better and better, which is great. But if they didn't get a lot of any financial aid, they might get angry when you mention that. So that's not my main reason for giving. I usually talk about all of the resources that were available to me here on campus because of alumni giving. But most important of all, because of alumni giving, I was able to come here and meet friends and have the most amazing conversations that I probably will have in my entire life. So even if that person did not receive any financial aid package, but because of alumni donation, I was able to make that connection, to make that friend. And I know that a lot of my friends have received some sort of financial aid. So I guess that's how I start thinking about making that donation, about the people that I met because of people that cared so much about the university that they made sure to come back and participate and give. So usually that's how I get started when I'm talking about giving.
I like to talk about the pride of affiliation with the university. I am one of those who did not receive any financial aid from Chicago, so I don't talk about that. But I do talk about how the university changes lives, individual lives, my life. It changes knowledge in the world with the research development, the way that Chicago and our faculty and students are pushing the boundaries of knowledge and really making a difference in the world and transforming the world. And that, I think, is just an amazing thing to be a part of. And I am so thrilled and honored to be a part of raising money for the university to be able to do those things. So I talk with folks, and typically I'm asking people for money at the $2,500 level and above. although not everyone is able to do that. Sometimes gifts are smaller. But typically, when I'm calling someone, it's to ask them for a gift at that level. And so sometimes it's a personal solicitation face-to-face. It definitely is building a relationship. It's talking to people about what I love on campus to get them excited, even if they haven't been back on campus for 20 or 30 years. There's still this sense of trying to establish for them that pride of affiliation. So I use words like join me in making a gift to the university. And I think it's really helpful for people to know that I am making that commitment and believe so much in it and am passionate about it. And I want them to feel that sense. So it's join me in making a gift to the university.
For me, I think the reason that I have been a donor is because I feel like so much of my so much of the reason that I've had personal satisfaction and professional satisfaction in life has come because I've had associations with the University of Chicago. I went to a good public high school in Kansas. It was probably not anything that people would know of. It had the word rural in the title of it. It's probably not as rural as the school that Simon went to, but it's not something that you would expect to have people say, oh yeah, that's a great institution of secondary of learning, and I felt like the university gave me a chance, and they took a chance on me, and they saw some potential in me, and I came here and was able to was given opportunities to do well academically and to get involved in things extracurricularly or co-curricularly. I met lots of, as Simon said, I met lots of good friends here, and I met my wife here. We got married on campus, and the personal connections were really valuable to me, and all of that has been the case with being at Booth also. But the other reason I think it's kind of important to give is because other people, when they look at the University of Chicago, they look at whether alumni are participating philanthropically, and they really don't. They notice when somebody like David Booth gives a gift the size that David Booth gives, but they look at it at a much more general level, and they just look at to see whether people are giving. And I think when the way I always think of it is in finance classes at the business school, there's this signaling concept, and investors look at what the company is doing, the people who have lots of information about that organization, what actions are they taking, and what can you infer from those actions about their confidence in that institution, and is that a place where you ought to put your money or invest your time as well. And I think that it's something that the reason that it gets included in things like rankings for the college or other kind of like educational evaluations is I think that that it's just a broad measure of do the people who know this institution best feel like it's a place where they're going to invest, and if it is, then that's a sign that that's a good place for me to invest too. And so I think it's kind of important for alumni to give some money, even if it's not a lot of money, because in addition to the fact that the dollars are needed for a variety of things, whether it's student aid or faculty or fixing roofs on 100-year-old buildings, it's important because you send that signal that as an insider and as somebody who knows about this place, it's a valuable place for somebody else to commit to.
Great, thank you, panel. So why don't we move on to the next question, which maybe most of you are interested in hearing about. But how do you overcome your own anxieties when you asking someone for a gift? I'm sure you've been nervous before. How do you become comfortable picking up the phone and making that call?
I can do it, so we don't always start with Simon. The thing that there's always anxiety about it. The thing that I've found makes it easiest and I think leads to the best results is I ask the people who I know are most likely to give. And you can see we know people who have either been past donors or who have been engaged. And I find that those are the easiest people to go to solicit and go ask for support, because I think that they're the ones who are most likely to give you're going to have the greatest likelihood of success. And so, when it comes time to do solicitations for the class council, I want to know, who are the top dozen or 2 dozen most generous donors, and those are people who I ask first. And then I want to know who's donated every year for the last 5 years, and those are sort of the next set of people I ask. And the thing that is good about it is in addition to the fact that you're able to make progress towards whatever your goal is, whether it's dollars or participation, is that it gives you this sense, it gives you it gets you over the nervousness, and the success makes you feel good. And my feeling, and what I have found is, I think maybe one of the things we'll discuss later is how do you handle it when somebody says no, is that when you think about doing solicitations in that way, you get very few people who say no. And in fact, I get more people. I find people, if I send them a note or I give them a call and ask them to make an annual gift again, as they did this time last year, I get more people who say, thank you for reaching out to me. I really appreciate that reminder. Far more than I get people who say, why are you harassing me for money I don't want to give? And I think it goes to Adam's point that people really do, they do want to be asked, and people who have supported the university in the past, have a likelihood to support it again in the future. And so an easy way of getting over that nervousness is to find out where you're most likely to be successful. And in my case, that's been people who've given in the past. In other cases, that might be people who you have personal connections to. But cold calling can be intimidating, so try and find people who are more likely to be warm.
Some things that I do to prepare for a call. First of all, I will make sure I have their donor card so I can take a look at their donor history. I think it's really important to be prepared for, when did this person graduate? What school did they go to? Are they a college alum? Just so you have the facts in front of you and sort of play that forward to think about the kinds of things that you would talk with them about. I like to make the call when I'm really relaxed, so that is not going to be an evening after work when I'm like a basket case. So I like to make calls on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. I consider those the golden time to make calls. Now, I don't do it if the Washington Redskins are playing, but avoid the football games, but I really like to call when I'm relaxed and I know the people I'm calling will be relaxed. I like to also make sure I know what's going on in the local club or maybe something that's going back on campus so that I can mention a few things. Oh, do you know that we're going to have a Harper lecture coming up in 2 weeks? I want to make sure that I have the facts about that to share with them. Just some things to kind of keep the conversation interesting so there's something in it for them. They might enjoy some kind of event. And it's also fun to make sure I'm up to speed with what's going on campus. So I can talk about the Logan Arts Center that is going to be open in March, and the hard hat tour that I did. I remember once I called a woman who had been giving at a level around $200. It was just a regular phone-a-thon where we had maybe 20 people together making phone calls that evening. And I had just been on campus and done a tour of the John Crerar Library. And I mentioned that to her, and lo and behold, she had studied at the John Crerar Library, and, well, not at the library, but with the collection that had been somewhere else. She was so delighted to hear that there was a library for this collection, and she donated $1,000. So sometimes just sharing your passion and enthusiasm for what's going on campus be really helpful. I also agree that it's very important to talk about participation rates, that no matter what gift you give, no matter how small or how big, it's the participation rate that really matters to the magazines that do the ratings, and also for our peers that look at how we're doing. You know, if you're at Princeton and there's a 60% participation rate and Chicago's participation rate is 40, you know, it's really important to talk with people that we want to get our participation rate higher.
The most difficult part about asking for a gift is actually making the ask, saying, will you donate? So in my personal experience, if I can get that out of the way as soon as possible, it makes the whole conversation a lot easier. The way that I've been doing it, I've been phrasing it so I'm usually calling or talking with friends or acquaintances, people that I knew from my time here at the University of Chicago. I tell them, I will be asking you for money, but this is a great opportunity for us to catch up. We haven't talked in a while. But I just get that out there. And then the rest of the conversation, the rest of it is most likely going to be a conversation or a discussion, hopefully a dialogue. And if there's one thing that you can do coming from the University of Chicago is discuss. So I think that helps me a lot as I'm anxious about it, just getting it out there right away, and then just talking about the reasons you give and the things that you know about the university, asking them to join you as you make a gift as well. But just getting that out there right away helps with the anxiety.
Thanks, panel. So I think we heard a little bit about who these volunteer fundraisers have called to ask. They've called to ask donors. They've called to ask their friends, people that they know. We've talked a little bit about how making the transition to that ask. Simon says it right away. He says, "I'm going to ask you for money," right when he starts the call. You know, I found that personally tricky for me to make that transition from just catching up or talking about information to actually talking about a gift. Danny or Max, how do you handle that?
You want to go?
I don't spend too much time in the warm-up phase, but I think it is important to talk about what's going on. But then I like to talk about the contributions that can make a difference and ask and share the fact that I have donated to this or that and ask people to consider a gift. I think the most important thing about asking for a gift is that you believe in it and that you know that people want to be asked. Whether you're asking them to volunteer, and I spend a lot of time asking people to volunteer for the university as well, whether you're asking them for their time or their money, it's important to know that they really want to be asked. People want to do good things in their life, and they want to make sure their money is well used. Fundraising for me is allowing other people to make the most benefit that they can from their lives, their time, and their money. I see it as a way for other people to be fulfilled, and I'm just offering them a channel for that. And I really believe that. So I think it's fine to ask people. So I think it's something I like to do, actually. I'm not really hesitant about it because I feel I'm linking someone with their time and their money up with something that is really fulfilling. And people do want to be asked and do say, gee, nobody got back to me last year. What happened? Did you forget me? So you do get feedback like that that lets you know people are looking for that reinforcement. I think it's very important when you ask someone for a gift that you wait and you listen and you don't respond. So when you ask them for a gift, stop talking. That is the secret. Don't keep talking. Let them respond. Wait for them to respond. And I think that's the hardest thing. It's so easy to ask for a gift and then keep talking. Let me tell you why it'll be so good. Just chill and let them respond.
I mean, I think, I probably tend to be a little more direct as Simon does. I don't necessarily, not maybe quite as direct, but I understand, I think, Adam and Danny have a different view. I don't know that there's one that's right or wrong. And, if I'm calling somebody who I know well and I catch up with all the time, if it's a fraternity brother of mine, then I think that, there's kind of a lot of conversation that I can have before I make an ask. But for somebody who I haven't talked to in a couple of years, I kind of feel like they know, they know there's a reason I'm calling, because I don't call them very often, or I don't reach out to them very often. And so in that case, I think it's a little bit, it's easy to be, it's more comfortable for me to be a little bit more direct. And I think that your comfort level, makes a big difference. And, I think that the question of, do you have a problem transitioning from the small talk to to kind of getting down to business and asking for a gift? If you don't have that difficulty, then you can then I think to use an approach like what Adam and Danny do makes a lot of sense. And if that's something that is kind of you don't quite know how to shift gears, or it never feels quite right, then maybe being more upfront about it makes sense. I think that, but I think it's a personal a matter of personal preference. And I think that that you find the way that's right, that feels right for you and feels right based on the person you're calling and how well you know them. And I think Simon says that after that you kind of get to the fact that there is a solicit, there's an ask for a gift involved, that there is an opportunity to catch up and see how things are going and what's happening with your life and your family, and you should do that. It just matters when it feels comfortable for you to do it, and I think that can come up front and that can come at the end also.
I do think that regardless of the approach, going back to something that Danny mentioned, knowing what's going on here on campus, the things that the university is doing, new initiatives, new buildings, just new stuff in general, gets people excited. I want to be part of it. I like to think that my small donations every year, they'll get bigger as I get more money in life, make a difference. I like to think that by participating every year, I am part of everything that's happening on campus, and people get excited as well. So it's very important, whatever your approach is to making the ask, that you know what's going on campus, you know what's happening with the donations that everyone are sending every year here on campus, to get people excited and get people to want to be part of it and to think that they're more involved, and because you are actually the reason that all of this stuff is happening on campus. So I think it's important, whatever your approach, to have that ready when you're talking to someone about giving.
Great. So hopefully people will say yes to your ask, but what do you say when someone says no?
I guess it kind of depends on how they say no. I mean, sometimes you get people, sometimes you get, I've never had anybody just flat hang up on me, but I'm sure it's happened.
Oh, yeah.
And in some cases you get people who go into, who are kind of airing grievances that are years or decades old about, library fines or some professor who did them wrong. And in that case, there's nothing you can really do but listen. But I think sometimes it's always important to listen. It's always important to say I understand. And I think in a lot of cases when people are not going to give, they have a reason for it, and it's not arbitrary. Sometimes if they just say, no, I'm not going to do it, there's not much you can do to change their mind. And so it's important just to feel that you've heard their reasons. And so to Danny's point of, you really don't always talk, just stop and listen is important. And the other thing I would say that's somewhat related is sometimes you need to act sort of as a concierge. There was a member of my class who, I guess it was in the spring, when I was asking for a gift. Earlier that day, he had run into some trouble with his automatic University of Chicago alumni his permanent alumni email address. And he said, this is a big problem for me because I've used it since I graduated, 12 years ago. Everybody sends things to it. They're getting, bounce back issues. And it turned out that it was a problem with IT. And so I passed that on to Adam. Adam was able to talk to IT. We were kind of able to get that resolved, and as a result, he wasn't somebody who was going to not give because of it, but because we were able to help him, he's going to continue to be a valuable donor for our class and continue to, have it kind of adds to his good experience. So, if there is somebody who says no, and if there's something that you can do to help pass on the concern, resolve the problem, that I think is a good thing, and there's some things that you just can't fix. But anything you can do to kind of make it seem like you're going to do what you can to have the university be responsive to what their issue is anything you can do in that respect is good. And it might not turn no to yes now, but maybe it will help down the line.
I was just going to say really quick that sometimes that they're going to say no. If you're thinking about friends, classmates, people that you were with here on campus, but you still want them to participate. I think that sometimes, you want a challenge. You want to go for the people that are less likely to give because you want them to get involved. And this happened to me with senior class gift and then first year reunion and just soliciting donations in general. What I did with this one person that I'm thinking about right now that I knew was going to say no, and he did say no to people that asked him, I got all of our friends around him to donate, to give. And then everyone started talking about the reasons they were participating, the reasons that they were giving. And then he saw all of that and saw how it felt natural to all of us to participate and to give for various reasons. That at the end, without me asking, he participated, he donated. So sometimes you have to be a little schemeful and think of different ways to get someone to participate, even though you're not going to go directly say, can you help? Do you want to join me and participate, knowing that they're going to say no? So it happened twice, actually, with two different members of my class. So just a thought.
A good rule of thumb is it takes 10 no's to get to yes. So every no you get gets you a little closer to yes, right? So keep in mind that it is a process, it's building a relationship, and it's helping people plug into the university where they are. But it's always important to keep asking people because people's life situations change. At one point, they may have lost a job, and people tell you, I've lost my job, I'm not able to give right now. And it's important to make a note of that and make sure you share that information with the university. But then another time you may call and they've just inherited a substantial amount of money and their situation is vastly different. So you can't assume that you are always stepping back into that person at the same point because people's lives are so dynamic. So you can't assume that a no once is always a no. So keep the faith with it. I think it's also important to know when not to make the ask. So forgive me if I'm straying just a little, but I got a card to call an individual to ask for $2,500, which is, a big gift for a lot of people. But this person I happen to know because he happened to be the CFO of the company where I worked. He was singularly the most wealthy person in the company. Now, should I be calling and asking for a $2,500 gift? No way. This is a person who should be handled at the dean or the president's level. They should be solicited in a very different way, probably for a major gift. So sometimes it's very good to know this is not a good way to approach this particular person. So you need to approach every individual differently, and if you know something about that person, to give that feedback to the university. So in another situation, I would call and someone was a graduate of the geography department. Well, we closed the geography department. So when you have a card like that, you have to be prepared. How are you going to respond to their objections? This person has been left an orphan by the University of Chicago. right? So how are you going to get them or continue to make them connected when the faculty, the dean, the school that they love no longer exists? So it's really about preparation and being very mindful of the people you're calling and not just dialing the number and looking at the name as the number is ringing. That's not a good way to do it.
And the other thing I would just say is, that raising money is really, people who are philanthropically generous it's really important. But as Damon and Laura talked about, the overall goal of what the Alumni Association is trying to do is engagement at a broader level, and that's give, but it's also go and help. And so if somebody says, I really like the university, I'm just not in a position to make a gift that I feel can make a difference, then if you are able to get them engaged in some other area, if you're able to get them to come to a Career Month event or a Harper lecture or alumni weekend as an attendee, if you're able to get them to read Metcalf applications or do interviews or host an extern, unpaid job shadowing opportunity for a second or a third year in the college, that's a win in that respect. And I think that over time, somebody who gets engaged in those ways is, you're able to increase the chance that it, maybe it doesn't take 10 no responses to get to a yes. And I think that it's a win for the University of Chicago if you're able to, if they're not able to give, if you're able to get them to go or to help, that's then you can walk away from that interaction and say that's a win.
Great, thank you. I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I wanted to make sure we had time for questions. Michael, did you have a question?
Is there a seasonality to your ask? Do you tend to do it during before the tax year ends, or do you tend to do it before our fiscal year ends? I know I've had that dilemma for the Chicago Society. When am I really going to put the full court press on? So I know for class reunions it's different, I guess. And then the second question is, do you start out with an email, a voicemail, neither? What do you do?
I believe there's a tremendous seasonality. People are most generous between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's a busy time, but believe me, calling people in July is a lot harder than calling someone in late October, November, or December. It's just that sense of generosity that I think is more on display. But that might not all, and it definitely feeds into the tax year end, and it's good to remind people then. People need to be reminded. They forget, have I made my gift or not? And then if they blow it and don't make their contribution before the end of the year, wow, why didn't somebody call me? And then the next year you call them, it's like, why didn't you call me and remind me? You really are doing people a favor. Think of yourself as a huge help to them, to help them focus on what they want to do in terms of seasonality.
The second question? Any other thoughts?
I have had a lot of success talking to people by email, connecting with people by email. That might be a function of my demographic. I don't know whether you found the same way. But I'm also also when you focus on people who have given a lot in the past and are likely to do it again, then that's kind of a quick interaction. And in people with busy lives that works. So I found that to be a good way to do it, but I know some people would probably be more comfortable talking on the phone or feel like it's more personal to talk on the phone.
When you say use email, do you use that to initiate the contact, or do you use that to make the ask?
I've made the ask through email.
So all of you have, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, I haven't.
Have you done that through email?
I have mostly person-to-person or email. I've never made a cold call, not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And when you do the email, is it always someone that you know when you do that, or is it someone you may not know when you do the email?
Someone that I might not be friends with, but that I knew in my time here, as I'm looking at young alumni.
Yep.
2 more questions up here. Start with
I guess I wanted to, I had a similar question to his. When you make the calls, so often I get voicemail rather than someone actually answering. Do you sort of give them a heads up, this is why I'm calling, I'd like to call again, or do you not leave any type of message?
I absolutely leave a message and tell them that I'm a volunteer. I think it's very important to start every conversation by saying you're a volunteer. You're not a paid caller. So often we are solicited by paid callers. I'm a volunteer, and I'd like to speak with you. I'm calling for the Chicago Society, and I'd like to speak with you, tell you about some of the things that are going on campus. Now, even when I do reach people live and in person, and I agree with you that so often you get voicemail, but that's why Sunday afternoon is so good. Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoons are a great time to reach people, again, as long as it's not a football game. But even when I do reach people, I always ask, is this a good time to speak with you? Is now a good time, or would another time be better? Because the last thing you want is to make an ask and have somebody respond to you, I'm rushing out the door, I can't talk with you now. So it's much better up front to say, to set the parameters. Is this a good time to talk? May I have 5 minutes of your time?
When you say you're a volunteer, do you also identify yourself as an alumnus?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Sometimes I would add, or like what I do for reunion giving is I always email people and say, I would like to give you a call. Can I set up a time to call you? Because I like doing it by phone and email, and I almost always get a response. Sometimes I don't get a response at all. I just keep on emailing, but or calling.
But to your question, I would always leave a voicemail because you know everybody who calls you, right? You have missed call logs on your phone at home and on your cell phone, and so I think it's always just worth it to leave a message.
We have a question over here.
So in terms of actually making the ask, you talked about maybe calling at a certain level, $2,500, looking at the donor history or the patterns. So when you're actually making the ask, are you literally asking for a dollar amount? Are you saying, I know that last year you gave $2,500, so I'd like for you to increase that, or is it more of just like a general type of ask for a gift, not specific to an amount?
It's always a specific amount. And that's rule of thumb. That is baseline. Ask for a specific amount. Now, when I first started doing phone-a-thons for the university, they had a rule that you always had to ask everyone, even never donors, for $1,000. Fortunately, they aren't doing that rule anymore. But we always had to start at $1,000, and then they'd say, no way, Jose, and you'd say, well, would $700 be better for you? And then you'd work your way down to the $50 donation. But the point is that they ingrained in us in our training is always ask for a specific amount. So, and oftentimes when you get the card from the university, it will tell you the amount you have to ask. Okay, we want them to give $2,500, ask for $2,500, or it may say ask for $800. They've given $500, ask for $800. So always ask for a specific amount.
As a staffer, we'll provide some sample ask amounts, and we rely on you to let us know whether that's totally off the ballpark or if it's right on. Like Danny did with the CFO over her company. Sometimes we don't always know, but we have a best guess. Question over here?
Yeah, I just wondered, do you have the information, you may already do you have information that focuses on those alums whose companies match as well? I know I work for a company that matches a significant amount of donations, and I also work with other alums, and no one's ever really back into that. At least for mine, I just wondered.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The question was, do you get information about whether the employee or the alumnus's company matches? I don't know whether that's on call sheets or not, and I know sometimes it's not always accurate, but so many companies do match. I mean, any kind of major corporation is making that, it's part of their corporate philanthropy. And I think it's always worth saying, your employer, if it's a major company or firm, to say, your employer probably matches your donation, and or to say, you should inquire whether your company matches the donation. And it's important to let the alum know that what a matching gift does is it's somebody else giving the money and you getting the credit for it. So so it's a way that you can double your gift in some cases, or maybe if it's a really generous company, do more. But it's always, I think, always worth asking either suggesting it or saying you really ought to look into it, because I think some people just don't know that it happens, or they don't know that they get the credit for arranging that matching gift.
Just a quick follow-up to that CFO. Does the office do the homework, or do we do the homework for finding out that
No.
information?
Well, the Central Alumni and Development Office would do that homework. This was an unusual situation, to give you just a brief bit of background, because the CFO was also married to an alum. And it was actually the alum's card,
Okay.
but alum, CFO, you don't want to blow it at
Right.
once. I don't want to go to the spouse and say $2,500 when, as a family, they should be giving millions, right? So that's when you, yeah.
And the university may have information that's out of date. They might not know about a promotion or have an appreciation for what a title means or what that position in a company means. So it may be the case that you know more about it than what the university knows, or they just, that alum hasn't hit the radar of somebody who's kind of a big deal.
And just to build on that point, to address your point as well, the call sheets that you receive from the university has a series of information about the donors, but typically that information can have a wrong phone number on it, a wrong email number. So for us to expect them to know whether they have the right comfort match is probably way beyond, it's like the next century or something like that. So that's something you'll have to work with on your own. I just, when I get bad email addresses, bad phone numbers, you just tell them that it's wrong, and then we try and see if one of us can figure out what the right email address or right phone number is.
While we don't have the matching gift information in the database yet, there are websites where you can enter a company name in and to see if they do have matching gift opportunities.
Yeah, and you can go to the CASE, the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education, and they have a little brochure, and just keep it handy when you're making the calls. We had a staff member support us with the Washington region who would give us those little brochures, and you can just get them, or sometimes another nonprofit that might be soliciting you just sticks it in their mailer, so you can keep those and keep it handy.
All right, well, so we are out of time. Thank you to the panel for helping out, and let's all give them a round of applause.